Hello students, welcome to the first section of notes that we are going to be working on. For notes, we are mostly going to be writing them down in this kind of format where it's a flipped learning style. It will be online, it will be in a video, and the reason for this is so that if you need to repeat some concepts or slow down a little bit, you can have the freedom to do so. So we're going to try this out, and we are going to start with just doing some basic math concepts. This will include the terms and the types of numbers that we will constantly be looking at. And so anytime you need to refer to these terms, we hope that we can have the same understanding. So let's start off by writing down the chapter title. If you haven't done so, you can open up to a new fresh page and just write down Intro Chapter Math Basics. If you need a pause to do that, go ahead and do so. And you can continue when you're done. So the first thing that we'll need to cover are the types of numbers. You could go ahead and copy this down as well. Now there are four types of numbers that we will be talking about constantly. And so knowing what the terms are for these numbers will allow you to provide a better answer, a more specific answer, or also know what to look for. So if we say, look at the integer or look at the decimal, we want you to know exactly what type of number you're going to be looking for. So as I mentioned, there are four here. We're going to start with the bullet point, and we're going to write the first type of number, which is a whole number. Now, an example of a whole number would be something like 0. So 0 does count. It is what kind of defines a whole number and differentiates it from a counting number. Another number that we have is simply the number 3, and maybe we could have the number 4,000. These are three examples of whole numbers. So the second type of number is a negative number. So a negative number could be something like -1, it could be a -20, or it could be a -300. Now keep in mind that as negative numbers get bigger, like the digits are bigger or the absolute value is bigger, then the actual value of the number is getting smaller. So -300 is the smallest number that we have so far in the numbers that we've listed out. So the next section here, or the next set of numbers, would be decimals. And they're anything with a point, so something like 0.1. Right, that point is what we call the decimal. We can have a negative decimal, so a -3.5. And we could have a number that's maybe bigger, 100.36. As long as you see that decimal point there, you know that it is a decimal, which leads to the last one, which are fractions. A fraction could look like this, 1/4. You can also have mixed numbers, which would be something like 3 1/2. And you could also have an improper fraction where the top number is bigger, like 27/2. These are some examples of fractions. So these are the types of numbers that we will be covering. One little note to add as well. Usually for whole numbers and negative numbers, we do have one also other name for that whole category, and that is integers. So whenever you see these words, don't get overwhelmed, but just remember that you are looking for one particular type of number. So the next the next topic that we are going to cover is simply reviewing the places in decimal. So we're going to call this section decimal places. And we're going to write a fairly big number here, which is, let's say, 2,000, and I'll put a comma there, 2,643.024, and that is what we're gonna have, okay? So now we're going to just draw arrows here and label what each of these places are. So actually we're gonna start with the one in the middle here. This right here is the ones, because they're the basic number. So the number left to the decimal are the ones, and then we have this, which are the tenths, or the tens. We have hundreds. Let me give myself a little bit more space there. And we have thousands. Now on the other side of this is where we add the little th. So make sure that you do differentiate between tens and tenths. That does make this section, the next one, the hundredths. And the last one here, which is thousandths. All right, so that's a brief review of decimal places. And this leads to the last review that we will have, which is absolute value. So absolute values, they are primarily or mostly used when you're trying to find the distance or like the distance value of a number from zero. Let me explain what that means in a bit, but the proper definition is the distance of the number from zero. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's say, and let's do an example here. So we're gonna do e.g. So for example, we have the number 25. So what is the absolute value of 25? Just gonna say absolute value. So then, if we're trying to find the absolute value, then we have to write this down, 25, and then we put these symbols there. So those two lines do represent the absolute value. So what is the absolute value of 25? Well, the way we find out is we go and we could take a quick look at the number line. So this is the proper way of finding it out. We have 0 right here, and let's say we have 25 right here. So what we're looking for is this distance. From 0 to 25, what would that distance be? And you could tell that it is 25 spaces. So the absolute value of 25 is positive 25, or just 25. Now, where this really makes an impact is when you're looking at negative numbers. So let's look at negative 3, for example. We're going to ask the same thing. What's the absolute value? So we start off by writing down absolute value sign and then 3. This is showing that we want to find the absolute value of that number. Now, if we're looking at it from the number line, we might note that this is 0. And I'm putting it a little bit more to the right because we need a little bit of space here. So then we know that there's -1, -2, and -3. And so what we are looking for is this distance right here. Now we know that there are 3 spaces, and so the absolute value is going to be 3, like positive 3. So in other words, whenever you're looking for an absolute value, the shortcut is make the number positive. So in other words, I'm going to give you a few examples here. I want you to find the absolute value for these numbers. So let's do a few examples. Find the absolute value of negative 24. Find the absolute value of 35. And find the absolute value of negative 2. You could pause and try to answer these. And when you're ready, you can hit play again. All right, so negative 24, like we said, is going to be positive 24 because it's 24 spaces away from 0. 35 is also, well, it's 35 spaces from 0, so we're just going to leave that one positive. And negative 2 is 2 spaces away from 0. So the absolute values, as you can see, are now the positive values of these numbers. And so with this is your first set of notes. Congrats on completing your first set of notes. We'll see you in class.